And this is the way we do it is through different activities. Our objectives is to support and strengthen safeguarding practices for traditional music of the North. So we are concentrating on intangible cultural heritage, but also we are concentrating on music. And it's not only folk music, it's all music which is regarded as intangible cultural heritage. So the actually only criteria for being in this project is for a musical tradition is so that there are communities or people who are actually feeling that the music heritage is something that should be passed on to the next generation. So there is this kind of idea of continuity with this musical tradition. So maybe it comes very close to the idea of folk music, but it's not necessarily always folk music. It can be any type of music, but then that type of music where the community has a sense of idea that it has come from somewhere and it is going to somewhere. And project timeline is here. So it's from the beginning of 21 and until next autumn. And the budget is about 200,000 euros altogether. And financing Interreg Nord. And here you see the national ones also. The actual output of the project, well, how are we doing this, promoting this safeguarding of intangible cultural heritage in the field of music? We are strengthening the networking. So this is what we are doing. We were, as Annika told, that we were in Framnes, and and what we are doing now, we are kind of trying to get together the people and the communities and the different stakeholders, schools, universities who are interested in this topic, so that we know each other and we can talk about these subjects together and then plan for the future. Then number two and number three. So we are working on a story map. This is one of the outputs of this project. And you can see a very, very pre-draft a picture of the web page we are planning. So the idea is that we have examples from this northern area, from the project area, which is Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Sámi, the northern parts. And so that we have examples of musical traditions or communities who practice musical traditions, and we approach in these on this map, or our approach is to focus on transmitting the heritage, how these musical traditions how they are passed on to the next generations. And this is something that we would like to kind of put on this map and show it in a very kind of educational manner, so that as fast as possible or as easily as possible, people who are getting to know this map would understand how what are the ways that these musical traditions in different communities in this area, how they get passed on. There are, of course, different ways. They can go in educational circles, in families, in more formal and in more non-formal circumstances. They can go through festivals and different gatherings. And this is what we are hoping for, that we will have very many different examples of different elements, different communities who pass on their musical tradition. And then when the map is ready, we have a kind of an overall view, what kind of music and is there available from, or what kind of music is practiced in this area and how it is passed on. And this is kind of a different approach than we are maybe used to in our in our countries, how we think about the music education. We always think about the schools and the educational systems that are very institutionalized, but we are very much focusing on the communities in this on this project. So to kind of get an idea of the non-formal side of traditions, musical traditions passing on from generation to generation. So the digital map, the story map, is one of the outputs. And of course, at the same time, we are mapping all the digital material that can be found from the communities, musical communities in these areas. And this is what we are actually doing now, that we are also try to get the archives in to the work of this project, so that our project personnel would be understanding what kind of ICH material, musical material there are in different archives, and what kind of concepts should be taken into consideration when working with these archives. And I'm very, very proud and happy for the subject and topic for today and all the presentations. I think it will be very, very interesting to see. The concept of intangible cultural heritage, it's not very old. It's still something that's kind of coming to the different institutions in our countries, and we have lots to learn, and especially when we take, for example, an archive, which is it has like archive work in Nordic countries. It has a long history of its own, in a way. It has different regulations and rules how we do our archive work. And now this intangible cultural heritage concept, it's not very applicable or it is applicable, but there are some kind of a different point of views that it's approaching from. So this is why I think it's very important for us to think about our archives and our archive work and all the concepts behind our archive work, and then try to look at this community-based safeguarding of community music. How does it do the archives already do it, and could they do it better, and so on. So 2 and 3 were there, and then we are working for a MOOC for another project, and we are writing it actually right now, and we are hoping that we can send this application in this year, and in the next project we are including a MOOC web course to this new project, and the story map that we are making would be kind of the basis of the MOOC. It will be built on the MOOC will be built on this story map. So it's kind of, the story map will be a easy access kind of a platform to get to know about the subject, and then we will build a pedagogical material on top of that. To say it in a nutshell, of course, there will be many more activities and many more approaches, but this is kind of the basic idea. And now we are also in the process of looking for partners for the next project, and we are hoping that we will have different universities and different folkhögskolas or communities also networked in the network for the next project. So it's very important that we have like a big universities, and then we have the NGOs for like Finnish folk music, like we, but then that we also have communities and like small players in a way, so that we can get a big group of people who are looking and stakeholders who are looking the same issue from different angles, so that I think we can profit the maximum with that approach. Then a few words about the UNESCO's Convention for the Safeguarding of the Intangible Cultural Heritage. So this is the whole project is based on this idea of ICH. And as I said, that it's not very old concept, and even though the things that that are included are thousands and thousands of years old, so in a way there's nothing new. But from like a cultural work perspective, maybe you can say that there are some different emphasis that we are not maybe very used to. So I will just go them through here in the beginning also. So how does UNESCO think about the concept of intangible cultural heritage, so that we can maybe talk and communicate on the same level all, and use these kind of same approaches as much as possible. So the convention is from the 2003, so it's about 20 years old. Actually, it's maybe 15 years old when the implementation started. So it's even the convention is not very old, but it has been said that it's the most successful of the cultural conventions of UNESCO, because I think 180 countries have now signed or ratified the convention. So it has been very, very fast, the process of the convention, and very many countries have thought that it is important. And when you sign the convention, of course, that means that your country say that we will implement it, and we believe on its concepts and the things that it's aiming for. So on that way, it's a kind of like a global list of aims and regulations, how we safeguard and how we think about culture and cultural heritage and so on. It is, of course, a sister convention to this material, to this World Heritage Convention, which is more known in the world, which deals with monuments and buildings and so on. But the approach is different because it works with communities and especially with immaterial heritage. So about the concept of ICH in the convention. Here are from the convention about from the definitions, Article 2.1 in the beginning. It says that it means practices, representations, expressions, knowledge, and skills. So this is the immaterial part of it. It can include also objects, but when they are kind of used when expressing something or when practicing something. So as such, instruments, objects don't include to that, but if they are associated with the practices, representations, expressions, knowledge, and skills. Important part is that the communities recognize the intangible cultural heritage. So this is you always have to have a community. You always have to have the people or the practitioners of the heritage to say that there is actually a heritage. So it's not for us, for the experts, to say what is intangible cultural heritage and what is not. But actually, we have to go to the practitioners, and we have to find people who themselves think that this thing that they do and they want to pass it on to next generations, this is something they call heritage. They call intangible cultural heritage. And this is how it works. So the kind of the authorization of the whole concept is at the grassroots level with the communities. It continues. It is transmitted from generation to generation. So this is another important aspect, and it is constantly recreated by communities and groups in response to their environment. So the idea of the communities, they are the ones who are actually authorizing the concept of ICH, but also another important thing, that there has to be this kind of passing on from generation to generation, happening, to call it intangible cultural heritage. It can't be kind of dead culture. It can't be something that's in the museum and it never changes, but it actually has to live and change, and it has to be passed on. And if it always will stay the same, actually that's a reason to think that it's maybe not ICH, or it's not considered to be ICH. So one more thing maybe to make clear here, that this, I'm talking about the concept of intangible cultural heritage. So this from this convention's point of view. So it's not like scientific facts that I'm saying here, but this is about the agreement, the convention that these countries have agreed to define ICH, intangible cultural heritage, as such. So it's you shouldn't think of it as kind of what is real or what is not real, but actually as an agreement that will help to kind of work with this concept a lot. Another concept that's very key to this idea of ICH is that there has to be this mutual respect. One element can't be considered to be more important than another as such. So promoting respect and cultural diversity, as maybe it's easier to think about the biological diversity, that all the organisms are needed to have the whole circle of life happening. So the idea is kind of the same, that we have to have this diversity of traditions to have the whole rich cultural humanity happening. But not one heritage can be said that it's actually more important or better than the other ones. And further on, it has been agreed that these human rights issues and instruments, they have to be compatible with the ICH, and also sustainable development. So the idea that we are not stealing from the future generations and actually letting them kind of develop their future also. So here was my presentation about the project. So now we go on, and Kristina.
Yes.
Yes, great. So the floor is yours. You're welcome. Please.
Thank you very much. Right. I will speak for a while and give you a short overview of the folk music archives in northern Sweden. Just a little overview, and it might be a provocative question, but we are talking very much about the transfer of intangible cultural heritage, and we are discussing digitalization, and right now after the pandemic we are doing most of the things on distance, and I have been thinking a lot about the need for physical archives, and my own the way I behave during the pandemic and after the pandemic, and I see my son doing everything on the distance, playing his computer games and working through his mobile phone. So is there a need for physical archives for transfer of intangible cultural heritage, one might ask. So let's move on to the next slides. I will be looking at the three northernmost areas in Sweden. And I was looking at the Aurora region now. I think we are about to switch within the EU, and there are different project areas or project funding areas, so to speak, in different time regions. But I think for 2022 and 2023 and forthcoming will be in the so-called Aurora region. And we just do a quick overview for Norrbotten, Västerbotten and Västernorrland. We have seen varying access to folk music material in these regions due to closure of archives, actually, relocation of materials in some cases on the negative side. And on the positive side, during the last decade or so, we have also seen publicly financed access projects, as projects that focuses on highlighting access to both intangible cultural heritage and also real things like photographing tables, chairs, and other items. So that's on the positive side. Let's look on the next slide. If you, in a very easy way, look at the folk music side of things and just very easily try to separate it into what do we pass on, try to separate that into three categories: tunes, traditions, and tradition bearers. What to play, how to play it, and the tradition bearer itself, who was playing, when, and where. This is maybe not a scientific partition, but very easily you could say that what to play you could capture in sound recordings, video recordings, and both handwritten and printed sheet music. But how to play? Well, that can, in some cases, when you are more and more trained, you can listen to that and understand that through a sound recording, and you can see it in a video recording. But that wasn't captured until, well, later on in the 20th century, and surely not in the earliest recordings. Maybe also in pictures. So to what extent, when you look historically, it's not so easy to find it. And I have met a lot of people who in the middle of, or in the 1960s, 70s, 80s, who have met with a lot of tradition bearers in the northernmost parts of Sweden. And in the beginnings of this era, in the late 1950s and 60s, the tape was scarce. So with the earliest recordings, it was accustomed to speak with the fiddler or whoever you were talking to, and only record when there was playing, because the tape in itself was so valuable. So you had to switch off the recorder when you were speaking. And then, of course, the notes that you took is preserved as well. But when you talk about the tradition, how you play, when you were playing, that is only captured in the notes from the meeting. And who was playing, when and where? Well, that could also be found later on than when cassette recorders and digital recorders was more in common. Of course, then we have hours and hours of conversation also on tape or on recordings. And we have pictures, we have also music, we have newspaper clips as a source for this. And we have now also later on, when people start to gather own material, doing research, local researchers, if I may, not trained scholars, but who are really interested in their own tradition, starting to produce regional, if I may say, regional editions concerning local pelimannit, fiddlers, tradition bearers. So I can see a lot of small, a lot of books or music sheets that are released that really focuses on one tradition bearer, and that are released in only very limited editions, and not so easy to get your hands on if you're not very knowledgeable about this region, or if you're not there and know where to buy it. And also about learning how to play, which is a very interesting I'm trying to find the English word now, but which is a very interesting aim now of this project that is on now, is really the focus on how can we pass on traditions through online courses and everything, because earlier on the meeting between two persons has been really the best way to trade tradition, and now we see that online possibilities gives us really that opportunity. And earlier on we had the meeting, and then in the area where we collected digital material, we have had strains or not restrictions, but it has not been so easy to capture this moment of how to play with all the hours and hours that a meeting or a lecture or so on can give. So that is, I think, a really interesting part of this project, and all the efforts that we can make here to capture how can we really capture the essence of how to play and make that trait usable for listeners and students of the course. But let's go into a little about the format and in which data is collected, or the previous material. In my business, where I work on my daytime job, I work as an IT consultant, and we talk about both the digitization and digitalization. So digitization is the converting of data to a digital format. 3 examples: I can scan a photo to a digital file, or I can turn a paper checklist into a digital checklist app. And actually today I am on site at LKAB, wearing a slightly uniform, and I will go out today in the plants and do some testing on a mobile phone, because we have actually turned paper checklists into mobile apps. So that's what I'm doing today, later on. Or, for example, convert contents of cassette tapes to digital files. And now we move on to digitalization. So in my business, we turn to Gartner Group. It's the go-to knowledge source for digitalization processes. And they define digitalization in itself as this. It's a use of digital technologies to change a business model and provide value-producing opportunities. And value-producing opportunity could be time-saving, or if you find a way to create a service that you can get paid for, of course. And in the archival business, I have, of course, experienced this during the later years. So we can have, for example, we can have a digitized product underneath all this. For example, I can take the train, go to an archive and get help from an archival assistant looking for some material that I listen to in the archive. This these melodies, these tunes can of course be digitized. I can listen at the archive, I can take the train back again, and I can have taken notes during these listening sessions that I bring with me at home. Or I can sit at my computer at home and I have browse into a formula, and if there are indexed search parameters, I can search for a sound file. I can send an email and I can order a copy of this sound file. They can send it to me or transfer it to me, and I can listen at home. And please note that this can be the same digitized sound file that can be underlying this. So I can have a totally digitalized process, or I can have a quite manual process here, but I can have a digitized copy lying here underneath both these processes. And that's right now going on. And both of them are very useful to me. In this way, I can sit at home, and in this way, I can go to the archive and find a lot of other interesting stuff. So work processes that are digitalized can enable us to work anywhere, and we can have faster communication and, of course, a lot of sharing. But now let's go into the question of anywhere. So in Norrbotten, we of course have, when I started to work at a project for folk music at Arkivcentrum Norrbotten, which is a part of the Norrbotten County Museum Archive, we went to visit Aja, which is the Sámi Museum in Jokkmokk, and Aite is the archive and library, and we were all in awe. It was fantastic. I won't go into that. It's part of, but it was fantastic. They were long before us. I think that the Sámi community had really well, gotten long ahead. So we had some inspiration there. So there is one, there's a big archive also in the Norrbotten County Museum. But concerning folk music, there was a so-called access project between 206 and 208. That was it. We did some digitization of folk music material from the county, but there are no special personnel and for it. So that's basically it. Let's move on to Västerbotten. Also County Museum in Västerbotten, and there is other museums, of course, in the municipalities, but I won't go into that. The County Museum have digitized copies of sound recordings of folk music, houses written collections and the library from ISOF. It's the Institute of Language and Folk Memories, but this is not anymore in place in Umeå. They have had a subsidiary or branch in Umeå earlier, but that is not, they decided not to have it in Umeå. So it's in Uppsala and Göteborg and other cities, but not in Umeå anymore. So they have placed some of their material in care of Västerbottens Museum. And some of the big collections have been moved out of ISOF because the collector owners are very afraid that their collection someday will be shipped to southern cities because they are very worried that their collections will be moving further south. And then to Västernorrland. This museum has a folk music collection, which is a part of a larger music collection, and it includes digitized folk music, and there is continuous work on the site with promoting the collection. For the next slide, talking about having a physical archive or versus digitized material that you use on a distance. What is the total amount of data? How much of that is digitized? What kind of material is it, and who handles the collection? If there's too little material that is digitized, what's the use of separating the collection from the original community? If 20% is digitized, I mean, there's not much we have too little of the material to access. And if there are notes and rare prints, that kind of material, are they prioritized for digitalization? Perhaps if there are handwritten notes from interviews, handwritten music, that's very interesting for a community to take part of. But if they're not prioritized for digitalization, well, it would be very, if they're not close to the community where they once were created, I think it's not a good thing to keep them separated. And who handles the collection? In some cases, we have material in an archive where nobody knows anything about folk music. On the other hand, we have material in a knowledgeable, well, folk music archive, but no one knows anything about the regional music. So that's, well, I don't know what is best. And then who's the target group? Is it researchers with national perspective? Is it teachers or educators in the regions or musicians in the region? I hope that I can listen to Anna's presentation later on. I would be very interested to hear how the archive is, what is needed to, when you want archive material to be a basis for educational material, what do we need to make the archive material accessible? So we go to the last slide. Is there really a need for physical archives for the transfer of intangible cultural heritage? Or rather, do these archives need to be situated near the source region? Well, I guess that I say yes, of course. I guess you guessed that earlier. I think you would have to have a very high rate of digitalization and digitization to overcome this distance. The relocation of collections that we have experienced in our close communities creates a lot of uncertainty, and expert staff to utilize these collections to its max is something that I see as an important resource. So as said, it would be interesting thing. I hope I can hear Anna's presentation, and if anyone had some comments, I would be happy to hear how things are in our neighboring countries. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kristina. It's very interesting, very valuable information from many sides, and raised many thoughts. But we will go on with the program. We have about 15 minutes in the end, so we can have a discussion there. And I think we probably just now don't have any discussions in the end of the presentations. We try to go kind of just go forward. But of course, if you have a question, please put it in chat, and we will see if we have time to, or the speakers can also then pick them up from there. So thank you, Kristina. And now Michael from the Architects University, please. The floor is yours.
Yes. Let's see. Just getting this. Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Matti. Yeah. Well, I guess we were already introduced. So my name is Michael Strobelt. So I am at the University in Tromsø. Sorry for not putting the ICH North logo on there. I guess I should have done that. But we also always are asked to use the university templates here. Anyway, so what I will be talking about is an ongoing project with it. Now I learned the right word, digitization of our archives, not just digitalization. I will also give a short presentation of the archives themselves, but mainly about the current work with creating an online access to the collection. There is an ongoing project called joik or joik, I don't know how we would say it in English. We have only talked about it in Norwegian here. It's financed by the Arts Council of Norway. And this project is trying to address various issues related to making the joik collection public online. The collection is already digitized and of course cataloged in a systematic way. So the main issues or the remaining issues are therefore the ethical questions about property rights, cultural representation, and also personal concerns related to some of the contents. In addition to technical aspects like choice of platform on digital formats, which I won't say much about because this is actually something that still remains to be solved. Ideally, the person who should be presenting this is of course the project leader in Tromsø at Tromsø University Museum, Camilla Bratland. Unfortunately, she's at a conference in Copenhagen this week, and but she has given me permission to present the project, and she has provided the necessary information to me. The part of my presentations dealing with the collection itself is based on material that Tromsø University Museum has published, and most of it can be found on their websites also. So yes, as I said, I will present some parts of the archives, the history behind it, current status with regard to access. Some of it is already accessible. And then if this works technically, I tried yesterday, there are some issues, but we'll see. I will show some of the samples just to show the different ways in which they already are being presented. Then I will say a few things about the ethical aspects that this project is concerned with, and also the way this project has been trying to solve some of these issues, because this is the project itself is about maybe formulating guidelines, finding ways not only for the material that already exists, but also outlining some guidelines for how to deal with these questions in the future. Yes, so the joik collection is part of the folk music archives at Tromsø Museum, which was established in 1949 by Arnt Bakke. He was not a musicologist or an anthropologist. He was a lecturer at Tromsø Teachers College, but a very dedicated person. So he started collecting folk music material from the region, and he did this for, let me see, almost 30 years. So I think he died in 1976, if I'm not mistaken. So this is really a lot of the core material in the collection. In 1980, there was an interim period where the material was basically just sitting there. In 1982, Ola Graf, who has really collected most of the material that's in the joik collection today, was appointed as a curator, which became a full-time position for him in 1986. And he held this position until 2 years ago. Well, eventually he became a researcher and professor. He has greatly extended the collection, traveling around, recording, interviewing, transcribing, and eventually writing his doctoral dissertation in 2002 about joik on the northern coast of Finnmark, studies on an extinct coastal Sámi joik tradition. And that's when he was appointed professor. And now, unfortunately for, what happened now? Yes. Why is it disappearing? Yes. Sorry about that. Unfortunately for the collection, when he retired, his position was not advertised and filled with the same focus and job description. So it has taken some time to find a good way to continue the work with making the collection accessible. And we are, of course, very glad that now the museum has been able to get funding for the current project. There are vast amounts of material. As you can see, 40,000 pages of written material, 2,000 original recordings. All in all, there are approximately 8,000 joik tunes that are documented in climate regulated storage. And the archives have a status, a national status, as a central archive for Sámi traditional music, and contain a lot of coastal Sámi and Skot Sámi material. Different types of material. There are historical documents, newspaper clippings, transcriptions of joik, and also a lot of correspondence. So this is originally on paper, but of course has been digitalized. Then there are original recordings and also copies from other collections. Yeah, I will try to show some samples here so you can see how these joiks are represented already now. Some of them as recordings only, some also as transcriptions, and maybe most interesting, many of them also in different versions by different artists. So, places. Okay, there we go. Just about the collections, and I think I have to actually, let's see if this works. I don't think no, I have to unshare and go into different. Yeah, so this is part of the material that's accessible, just a selection of things. There is also in English, here you can see an example of a collection that has been incorporated. So this is material that was not recorded by the museum, but is a collection that we have gotten permission to showing. No, I don't have the English version here. Oh, that's okay. Then part of it is also accessible through the Swedish library system. So if you go into Libris database, you can search database, but then you need to know which titles you are looking for, and you can order material from there. Yes, so let me show you some of the earliest material. Here, this is by Per Hetta. This is part of this Ustman collection, as I said, by this German anthropologist who emigrated to Norway in the 1930s. He made recordings on, as was common then, on wax cylinders, just like Béla Bartók and Edvard Grieg in their times. As we know, not a very durable form of documentation, which kind of gradually deteriorates each time it is being played. Now, I'm not sure when these were transferred to magnetic tape, but they sure have the sound of history in them. So let's see, just try to play one of these. Yeah, so this is actually the oldest sample that we have from 1935. Another example, here you can see material that's presented in different versions. Coastal Sámi joik from Snæfjord. Just let me play just a little bit of this. And another version of the same. I hope these were audible for you. Let me do one more here. Let me see. These were, by the way, recorded by Ola Graf. Just a second, I need to. Can you see this one? I hope. Yes. So here you see the version where also transcriptions are accessible. Unfortunately, you can only, when you listen, the transcription disappears, but. So, this is the same one that I played. I just realized that. So, but yes. So then maybe we actually can skip this part. But as you can see, there are already different parts that are available. So let me just go back to my presentation here. Yeah, so these were the ones that I just showed you. And this is all this material is available through the website of Tromsø Museum. It's a little bit confusing to navigate, but yeah, just have to be patient. I've included the links here. So yeah, maybe I should actually add the addresses as well. I can do that. Now I will move on to the Digi-joik project, which is unfortunately only a 1-year project, so it's short term. So it's, yeah, moving towards general access to the Sámi joik collection. And as I said, the project leader is Camilla Bratland. So question can be directed directly to her. So the objectives is opening up the collection and basically, as I said, dealing with challenges that some of the material pose. Now, since this is a 1-year project, this has the character of a pilot project, which will only deal with a representative selection, but then on the basis of that will both create an open platform where public can experience and research joik, and it will also then try to formulate, as I said, guidelines on how to present this kind of work. We all are aware that, I mean, the ethical questions are central to this due to the cultural sensitivities involved, both when it comes to Sámi culture, due to the history of oppression, but also especially in relation to joik, which has, as we know, a very strong personal dimension, tied both to the person who joiks, but in cases where joik is about another person that is joiked, as it's expressed, it's also, of course, the personal aspects tied to that person that is being joiked. Also, there is a strong concept of ownership. You have to be given permission to loan, to borrow a joik as a musician. So a lot of the work in this project is about making sure that these aspects are taken care of when the material is presented publicly. And then, of course, there are also the more typical aspects, structuring the presented material, finding and implementing the technical solutions. And there are, let me see, yes. I'm a little slow here. Then there are also some overall aspects in relation to the Sámi community, institutional issues. For example, what does it mean that this collection is placed, Sámi cultural collection is placed at an institution that is not part of that culture? How can one gain acceptance for that? So the approach that's being chosen mainly is really involving as much of the Sámi community as possible, involving the community as much as possible through including artists, practitioners of joik, to find answers on how to deal with the parts of the material that pose challenges. There are in this collection some joiks that were never intended for public performance. Some were recorded without securing permission from the singer, permission for publishing it. Of course, the permission for recording was given. And some examples contain highly personal expression. And there are apparently also a few examples that have kind of a derogatory character, making fun of a person. So there are a lot of sensitivities in this material that need to be addressed. And one way in which these questions are being dealt with is by selecting some of the material and presenting it to a reference group consisting of musicians, representatives for the music distribution business. There's also a member of the Sámi parliament and other prominent members of the community. And what you can see here is that first group that was being put together, where they are presenting their work and their findings at a seminar at Tromsø University, which happened the end of January this year. So they had, as I said, they had been given a representative selection of material that posed certain questions and were being asked to discuss if and how this material could be presented. And it was a very good event. It was a very good discussion, and I think, yeah, it was kind of laid the groundwork on how to proceed with this, and the idea of having reference groups seems to work very well. But this is a start. So time-wise, we are kind of halfway into the project, so we'll see how this continues. But yeah, so this is a short description about how this, yeah, the work, how to include members of the community. This is as much as I can tell you at this point about the project. There are, of course, there are technicians involved and all this others, but the interesting part, of course, is how to come to terms with some of the ethical challenges, and this is an example about that. So I will just stop here, and if you have questions, you can yeah, contact Camilla Bratland, and she will be happy to answer your questions. So thanks for attending.
Thank you so much, Michael and Anna, please.
Hello. Yes, my name is Anna Näkkäläjärvi-Länsman, and I talk from the Sámi music teachers' point of view. So I'm like the one that is using the archives, and I have an experience of teaching from many years in different levels in the Sámi community. And the biggest educational experience for me was teaching in the Sámi Musihkkaakademiija. And that was run here in Utsjoki municipality in the northernmost Finland, in Sámi, from year 2015 to 2020. And at the moment, we don't have any teaching going on, but we are of course planning our future and how could we continue now. But during that project, we got quite valuable experiences about teaching the Sámi vocal music traditions that work quite special way if you compare it to the Western music. I just got well from Corona, so my voice might not be working all the time perfectly, but I'm managing. So I really wanted to have this presentation, even if I'm not like really well yet. So at first, I will start from the basics and talk about joik. And joik is the traditional music, vocal music of the Northern Sámi people. And as we know, we have many language groups in Sámi. I think we have now 9 spoken Sámi languages in the Sámi area that covers Russia, Sweden, Finland, and Norway. And that of course means that our culture is really diverse, and it's also visible here in the vocal music traditions. So joik is the tradition for the Northern Sámi people. And then in the Finnish side, we have livde, and that's the traditional vocal music style of the Inari Sámi people. And then there is laut, and that is the vocal music tradition of the Skolt Sámi people. And then when you go far more to east to the Kola Peninsula, there is lut, and that is the traditional music for the Skolt Sámi in the Kola Peninsula area in Russia. And then of course, when we go to the south from the Northern Sámi area, in the parts of Sápmi that are in Sweden and Norway. There we have Vuolie and Welle. So as you can see, there are many vocal music traditions, and joik, it's not an umbrella term for these vocal music styles. Joik is the traditional vocal music of the Northern Sámi people, and I belong to Northern Sámi people. So I'm talking about joik now. The other vocal music styles might work differently. And I know that, for example, Leut works a lot differently than the Northern Sámi vocal music tradition. So the things that I'm telling now, they are not like adjustable to the other vocal music styles, or they might be, yes. The joik is, of course, an oral tradition. It's passed on from generation to generation in families and in communities. And nowadays, it is still considered as the oldermost still living vocal music tradition in Europe. And the joik culture is still really much living in, for example, in the reindeer herding communities and other communities that still live somehow this really Sámi life. But there are a lot of parts in Sápmi that the vocal music traditions are disappearing, of course, and that's because our we Sámis, we are getting more and more aparted of the traditional communities, because most of us don't make a living from the traditional Sámi livelihoods anymore, and that makes like the Western world come into the Sámi community more and more. And I think the vocal music styles are the most vulnerable cultural artifacts, and that this modernization is affecting a great deal right at the moment. And in Finnish side, I know this area the best, of course. The situation is not good, I would say. There are still few families that the joik tradition is passed on as an oral tradition in the family, but not many, I would say. Let's talk about joik and how it works. It's not only music. You can't just take the melody and joik it without knowing what you are doing. And that is because in the joik tradition, we have a lot of personal joiks. And that means that the joik belongs to the person, or that the joik is the person. So that is not about the person, it is the person. So the joiker, for example, if I joik my grandfather or I joik my brother, I'm not joiking of my brother, I am joiking him. So I'm trying to draw or make a musical picture of the object of the joik with the joik, with using a certain melody my brother has, and the rhythm, how I work with the rhythm in the joik, and how do I use the joik syllables in the joik, how do I use the lexical words, and what kind of a interpretation, the vocal technique I am choosing. And first of all, what is the feeling I have? Like the one joiker said when we asked in Sámi Musihkkaakademiija, what is the joik? And the joiker answered, joik is the feeling. So the connection between the joiker and the objective of the joik is really important. And without that connection, you can't make the joik. It's really important to remember that the joik is our spiritual legacy. It contains the main values of the Sámi culture, And one of the biggest of them is the family and belonging to the Sámi family. That contains the living people, our ancestors, and the future generations. And also, of course, we have yoiks that are still living in this time, that are about persons, or not about, but are the persons from this, living persons from this time. But when we go to the ancestors' yoiks, then we think that the society own the yoiks collectively. So the afterbearers own the yoiks collectively. So when we think about the permission, like how can we use the yoik of an ancestor, then if we really read really tightly this kind of a rule, then we would think that we have to ask from all of the afterbearers the permission. So in many cases, this is of course not possible, and maybe it's not also really a good thing to think about it like this. But this is actually how the Sámi community thinks about yoik. So like we can think if yoik should be in publicity at all, because it has been an intimate form of communication inside the families and societies. So the Sámi popular music started to evolve in the 60s, and we're still thinking that what kind of yoiks are proper in this public arenas. And a school is a public arena. So how to bring this private material to a public space in an ethic way. At the Sámi Musihkkaakademiija, our main purpose, main vision was to revitalize the vocal music traditions and give opportunities for students who didn't have a connection with their roots in the Sámi vocal music tradition, to have a possibility to learn that. And it was really hard to think in the beginning, how should we do that? Because of course we had the really diverse group of students. We had students from every language group, from Northern Sámi, from different villages of Northern Sámi area, from Inari Sámi, from Eastern Sámi, and they all belonged to the different families. So we couldn't just have one curriculum for them. Let's learn this and then we know how to yoik. We had to think this differently. Of course, this school was for adults, and it was for Sámis only. So Sámi language and the knowledge of Sámi culture was a criteria to get into the school. We had to make this really rough decision because we wanted to offer this opportunity only to the Sámis and really revitalize the spiritual part also of this culture. We of course gave an overall picture of the traditions in Sámi and the vocal music dialects inside the different traditions by learning from the elders, from yoikers from all over Sámi. We visited yoikers and we invited yoikers to visit us, and that was a really great experience. And we got a really good overall picture of things that we should consider when learning. But really a big part of the education was to dig into students' own heritage. And actually there was this kind of a course in the Sámi Alaskoula, Sámi University in Kautokeino. And it was run by Professor Vuokko Hirvonen. And we got Vuokko Hirvonen to teach it for us in the beginning. And it started with interviewing the students' relatives just by asking that if their relatives or some other people know if they have joiks in their families. And our students, most of them didn't know anything. So they were like, but I can't take this course because we don't, in our family, we don't have joiks. But in the end, they found something. Every one of the students found something, and that was really, really great. One big part of the project was to draw a family tree of the ancestors. Who are there? What are their Sámi names? What are their names in the church books? And really know what we are looking for. And after making this family tree and really knowing your Sámi family, then we went to the archives and searched from there. And then we had like the tools, then we knew what we are looking for. And then we started to get some like hits from the archives. And I think this was a really, really, really good process because it really showed the students that this is like the starting point to know the Sámi culture and this value, this belonging to the Sámi family. And the joiks actually took the students there. And when they found one joik, then they started to look for more, and it's like started to like be a big, really, really big joik tree for some of the students. So it was really, really great. Then, of course, after we found the joiks, we had to make some research of the people that we found or the student found, and search from books, make more interviews, ask from relatives, ask from elders, and make sure that the joiks are proper to joik in public, because we were, of course, also practicing the joiks and making our own versions. But still we had this really big like ethical question all the time with us during the course, that how can we bring this material to this time in a proper way, that is like the right way, that we are not like making any circus from this heritage. Because of course there are many like hidden meanings in these joiks that we don't know what the joiker mean. We might not know what the joiker mean, for example, with some lexical words the joiker is using. And the joiks can be so old that we actually don't know, is the joik made to praise the person, or is it made to put it down? So there are these really, really small vibrations, details that is also almost impossible to know in this time, because the archive recordings are getting to be so old, and the generations are not there anymore to tell us how was that. And because these were not made for public use, these were for this communication inside the society. So there is a lot to consider when use it. Even if we had this environment, we were all Sámis, we were using Sámi languages, we were communicating with the community all the time, but still we felt this, that are we doing the right thing? Of course, it's a matter of courage and self-esteem as well. And we learned 2 of the joiks, and the students then presented them in these small joik concerts. And they also told a lot about background stories of the persons that they joiked in a really positive way. So I think that was a really good experience for the school, for the students, and also for the community. It's somehow also like brought the tradition to live again in a form that is possible in this time. And of course, this wouldn't have been possible without the archives. And I feel that the archives is our like a main teacher, and the joikers there and the elders there, they are our teachers if the connection between the joik tradition is lost. Then we can try to learn it from there. But it's really important to remember the Sámi values and try to think about the ethical things and the cultural sensitivity, even if you are a Sámi and even if the joiks belongs to you through your Sámi family. So as a result of this education, we got a lot of new elders actually who know about the joiks in a new way, in this archive research way. And I think this was really decolonization of the teaching of the Sámi music, because we had the curriculum for each student, like a special curriculum for each student, and that was quite special, I think. I guess it is more about person and people's identity and life and spirits and worldview, that it is only about music. So we have to handle these Sámi vocal music archives as a treasure and really make sure that they will not end up in wrong hands. Because we know already from now that the Sámi vocal music tradition has been used wrong in, for example, some ethnical popular music. So of course we want to be sure that this is not the end of opening the archives. So there are million stories behind the joiks that even we Sámis don't exactly know. So how are we able to share the tradition with others then? Thank you so much. And I pass on to the next speaker.
Thank you, Anna. That was very, very, very important, and I'm so happy for your words and so happy for your experiences. I think there is something like so much. So of course it's important for the work for the Sámi community, but also something that is very important for the other communities here in the Nordic area to have this opportunity to learn from your experiences. This is very, very valuable. I'm happy for your presentation and that you are here with us. But then, Outi, please.
Okay, thank you. I just still put my slideshow on. Great, and now I just switched.
And we just have to say to celebrate your doctoral thesis that you got just this last weekend. I can't. Sorry, I had to say this. So
Yeah.
Congratulations from us all. I'm sure.
Yeah, thank you. I think I also say a few words about the doctoral thesis during this presentation as well. So, but now the actual topic for my presentation is the changing roles of the archives from saving to supporting safeguarding, and I think the saving is the link to my thesis here. But first, I would like to say a few words about the institute and our archive. So I also work in the Finnish Folk Music Institute. So my name is Outi Valo, and I'm Mattis and Lauri's colleague there. And I put this next slide on. And so the Finnish Folk Music Institute, I think many of you know us quite well, but I still say a few words. So we promote Finnish folk music and folk dance, and we in the middle is the archive and the library, but we also have publications and education, museum work, influencing through cultural politics, research, and then of course the archive and library work is quite much the digitization work in the winter time, and a lot of recording mostly in the summer time. And then the archive here is quite a young one, so it is established in 1974, and the main collections here are from the Kaustinen Folk Music Festival. So every year people gather here in the festival, and then we record there the performings. But there are of course field work as well in the different parts of Finland, and this kind of interviews as well. But the largest collection is the festival collection, and it's quite overall from Finland who have performed here. And I also marked a few numbers here in the slide. So 5,600 hours of audio recordings, and 1,500 hours of video, and then other photographs. And of course these numbers are increasing all the time, every summer. And I have few pictures how we make the archive collections. So especially the contemporary recordings, we make I think 100 hours per summer probably is this kind of average number. And as you can see from the pictures, we record during the performings quite a lot in the festival. So we basically have two places where we do the recordings, and mostly there are practitioners who play in these stages. So we don't record so much about the professional musicians, but mainly about the practitioners in the stages. And we are doing this kind of metadata to the databases in the same time when the performing is going on in the stage. And the another picture, let's see if I can change my slide. So also this kind of not only the performings, but also this kind of lectures where the music is part of the lecture, and then interviews, like two persons are discussing together. But those are quite I think we make maybe 6 interviews per summer, and usually we choose the master folk musicians who get the credit to be the master folk musician during the festival. So at least those we try to make like more specific interviews, but usually we choose from 1 to 3 other persons as well. And but beside the interviews, the audience is usually there. And but last summer, we still had the COVID restrictions in Finland. So then we made this kind of decision that we actually streamed and recorded in the archive at the same time many of the performings. And that was of course a little bit easier because we didn't have the audience inside the same building, so we had more space for all the technical stuff that we needed. So usually we don't have this much space to use during the festival, but this was also really nice test for us last summer. And then we got a lot more audiovisual material compared to the normal summers. And so we practically streamed the performing and then recorded it to the archive at the same time. And now I get back to the topic that I chose. So in my doctoral dissertation, it's unfortunately it is in Finnish, but I tried to translate very fast the English version of the name here. So folk music collecting and national gaze, and there was one figure specific folk music collector and researcher Erkki Alakanni, who was the main person in my thesis, and he was this kind of authority in Finnish folk music collecting and also in this kind of folk music contests and Finnish radio broadcast company and folk music festivals. So he had a lot of influence in many places. So I looked in my thesis about his collectings in the after the Second World War in Finland until the 1974. And so from there, I just choose some motives that why we do record the music to the archives, and then after the independence of Finland. So here I of course used another archive collections, not only ours, but especially from the Folklife archives in University of Tampere. And so first it was this kind of saving the tradition kind of speeches in the collecting and in the recording the music, and it was this kind of that the tradition is dying away or we will lose the tradition. So that was the emphasis why they went to the fieldwork and why they did the recordings. And then after the Second World War, it was of course still about the saving the tradition, but it was also the competition related to the amount of collection. So they actually had this kind of who is having the most biggest collections, or who has the more how many hours do you have specific like tradition. So this kind of collection competition I mean here, and they thought that if we can collect everything, then we can have this kind of objective idea of the folk music. But of course it's not possible to collect everything. There are always choices that you have to make. And then after the 60s, it was also the saving, still maybe the competition, but also the differences already between different generations of collectors. Like the younger generation of collectors thought that maybe we have to have a research question first, and then we can record something according to the research question. But then the older generation still maybe thought more about the saving the tradition and have as much as possible. And now I think that maybe this kind of use has changed a little bit, and I started to think about maybe from the UNESCO side of point of view that maybe now it also that the archives could support the communities in safeguarding their traditions. So maybe this could be also a motive to do the music archives nowadays. And like Matti introduced in the beginning, the Convention of the Safeguarding of the Intangible Cultural Heritage. So our institute was accredited in 2018 as an NGO to the convention. And then the Kaustinen fiddle playing was inscribed to the representative list in 2021, so just before the Christmas. And so I think the UNESCO convention has offered quite lot for us. Like in the music exhibition, we are considering how you can feel to be part of the tradition or be the part of the community or feel the community involvement in somehow. And I think we are looking from this perspective our archive collections as well. And now we are having this kind of capacity building program for ICH as well in the institute. So we are trying to think this from the many directions. And what I think it might offer to the archives, this is quite the same things that Matti said from the article 2.1 in the first things, that the community involvement. I think it's a lot of this kind of planning and accessibility, like Michael, you said about your database. So this kind of easy access to the tradition. I think that's very much according to the convention. And so it's a low threshold to get things, or this digital material bank as well, of course. And I also think one is that we don't have this kind of gatekeepers maybe anymore, like in the old collections. There are strong gatekeepers, the collectors and the organization, who said that this is tradition or this is not tradition. And so one example probably is also the virtual Kaustinen, that is the picture is from their website from I think 2020, where they could ask that people would send their own YouTube videos to the festival. And I think this was also this kind of easy access and no gatekeepers kind of project for our archive as well, because then people could send their own videos what they wanted to send, and they could create and produce the video as they wished to do. And I think in the first year we got maybe 150 videos, and in another the festival received, and then in the next year even more. And but maybe the problem was still how we should get them to the archive, as because we couldn't just download them from the YouTube. So people actually needed to send the videos for us, and I think that was again little think that how that could be easier for the performers. How could it be done easier, because the videos are too big for the just send as an email attachment or this kind of thing. So maybe we can figure out how we could get more the videos, because I think just a little amount of the actual videos came to the archive after the festival. And I think this would be really interesting research material after a few years. So hopefully we get more of that, and hopefully maybe we have to launch some kind of place next summer during the festival that please bring your video here, and we just put it in the computer, or this kind of easy solution for the performers. And but yeah, the virtual Kaustinen was quite also popular, and then we made this kind of questionnaire to the performers after the festival, how they felt the virtual kind of performings. And it was really I think 90 people answered to this questionnaire, and then here 50 people actually from those has sent a video, so they answered in this question as well. And they said that yeah, it was really important from them that they could send the video to the virtual festival even. And then of course there were a lot of restrictions in Finland, so in the first COVID pandemic kind of year, and the sending the video wasn't really laborious. So maybe we have to consider what is also easy access to send the video afterwards to the archive. And then they said it was really motivating and useful, and they also watched each other's videos, which is also very nice that they had this kind of virtual community. And then they, and 76% said that yeah, it's very important that my performance was shared in the virtual Kaustinen website. So they produced the video just for the festival, and also help to recognize what is cultural heritage. I think that is also in the archives. It is a spirit of UNESCO. And about the archival silences, like I just showed to this picture a few maps of men performings by instrument performings by men in 1940s, and then instrument playings from women in 1940s. So there are a lot of unbalanced situation. So so I think this kind of silences can be brought in the this kind of have more emphasis. And then the transmitting the cultural heritage, that is also again a lot of spirit of the UNESCO convention. And then we have had at least this kind of master folk musicians who, and then students who come to play with them, and those we have recorded in our archive. But of course, then the music, how it goes in the families, I think that is still a thing that we could consider also for the future. How could we record these kind of situations? And there are really nice pictures. So I chose two from the jamming sessions between the different generations. And then, of course, the recreation of the new cultural heritage as is in the convention. So that is important to archive as well. And we have archived these kind of music competitions. And where, especially here is the Konsta Jylhä competition, where they could also create new songs and compose new musical tunes. So, and of course, regarding the younger generations, as in the old archives, is quite this kind of old age groups that they preferred. And then in the end, hopefully I'm not going too fast, but like it said that, like Kristina said in her presentation very nicely, that the old mission of the archive is not still disappearing, even though we have a lot of new perspectives. So we still need to have the old collections there as well, so we can understand the change, how the idea of the tradition has changed, or how we consider the idea of the tradition. Yeah, hopefully I managed to say everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Outi.